Now we're doing our aerospace workforce and STEM panel. This panel is sponsored kindly by Boeing and SAIC. And we'd also like to recognize this year's education sponsor, Jacobs. Their support has funded 10 student registrations, helping us to bring these energetic and inquisitive participants to us this week. So please give a warm welcome to our moderator, Dale Thomas. Dale is a professor and eminent scholar here. And welcome, Dale.
So thank you very much, Alan. And I'm just going to say a couple of things here, and then we're going to get into it. Wes's remarks could not have been scripted better, talking about this being potluck, because the way this session has been structured. Well, before I get into that, I probably need to add something. You may have looked at your program and said, you know, I know Mike Kincaid, and that is not Mike Kincaid. And you're right, I am no Mike Kincaid. Mike, unfortunately, is ill, okay? And so I was one of the panelists, and, you know, he asked, and I agreed to backfill for him. So now getting back to the potluck aspect of this, it's going to be interactive. Each of you, I ask you, get your phones prepped. If you're not on Wi-Fi, go ahead and get it on Wi-Fi. This is going to be the mechanism by which you enter your questions and vote other people's questions up. It's fairly intuitive. You'll see how it works. But if you're not able to use it, please take a moment, and as it talks about in your program, you know, get on the Wi-Fi or make sure you have a good cell phone signal and engage with us, because this is going to be a very interactive session. But first, we will go through some introductions. So our panel today, of course, was going to be Mike Kincaid. He may be tied in watching this remotely. I don't know. So Jimmy Hodges, the president of Calhoun, is here with us today. John Horack, the Neil Armstrong Chair in Aerospace from The Ohio State University, is with us. Marina Kingsbury, Director of Sponsored Programs and Grants from J.F. Drake State Technical College here in Huntsville. And myself, of course, and Comas, you are not listed on this list here. So Comas Haynes is with us. I believe you're listed in the program, though, if I look. Yeah, so yeah, I don't see you in the program either. Well, so Comas is also with us. He will be getting introduced, and trust me, he really is here with us today, even though he's not listed in the program. So the way we're going to do it, we're going to go through just a couple of charts, then we'll do introductions, and then we will engage in the session. So next chart, please. Next chart, please. So this is just a chart that has a couple of QR codes and some addresses on it, where if you want to learn more about the kind of stuff we're talking about today, please access these programs. One of the QR codes is for NASA STEM. Mike Kincaid is the director of the Office of STEM at NASA headquarters. And there are a collection, I'll call it a portfolio. I almost said casserole in keeping with the potluck thing. A casserole of programs that make up the portfolio of NASA's Office of STEM engagement, and you can learn all about it there. Next chart, please. So to get the introduction started and to get things moving along, I would like to let John Horack, Dr. John Horack, introduce himself and say a little bit about what's going on at Ohio State. And also I'd ask the panelists just to sort of get the creative juices flowing. Please tell us one thing that folks in the audience may not know about The Ohio State University that you would like for them to know.
Wow. Okay. First, thanks for using such a young picture. That was me. I look a little different now, but I was wearing that tie yesterday. So there you go. So some things change, some things stay the same. I'm really glad to be back here in Huntsville. I started my space career here in 1987. After graduating from Northwestern University, came to work at NASA Marshall as a research scientist on the Gamma Ray Observatory and the burst experiment that was on board, and I managed to stay here until 2016 when I went to Ohio State. Proud to have my PhD from here at UA Huntsville, and feel really happy to be back among friends and colleagues that have meant so much to my career. I am at Ohio State now, where I serve in the capacity of the Neil Armstrong Chair in Aerospace. So I have an appointment in the College of Engineering, the John Glenn College. So my mother looks at my business card and says, "I recognize those two names. What is yours doing on there?" I said, "Well, just got to do the best you can with what you have." So I'm new at being a professor. I'm a seventh year freshman at Ohio State. And so academia was, and still is, very, how shall I say, foreign to me in many ways, with time at NASA. And then I was the vice president for research here at UA Huntsville for a while. And then also had the pleasure of leading the space systems group at Teledyne Brown, where, P&L responsibility and earnings per share and how many basis points of EBITDA can you add, all of those kinds of things are super important. So I think I bring a mixed bag. Someone said yesterday that the best opportunity for technology transfer is a moving van as opposed to a patent license. So with the scar tissue from the government, academia, and the private sector, I hope I can say something intelligent today about STEM education. What do I want you to know about Ohio State? We have one of the few, well, say, who's an astronaut's best friend? Did I see Mark Polanski here? Astronaut's best friend is a welder, right? Okay. So why? Because you rely on him or her to make sure they weld the spacecraft together properly. And Ohio State has one of the only ABET accredited bachelor's degrees in welding that you can get anywhere in the world. And I believe you can also get that online. So we are your best friend.
All right. Thank you very much, John. Next chart, please. And that's the chart.
Yeah, that was my chart.
Yeah, that was your chart. All right. Next chart. So next up, Dr. Marina Kingsbury from JF Drake State.
So thank you so much, Dale, for the introduction. I am a director of grants and sponsored programs at Drake State Community Technical College. I'm an outsider to the group. Speak about diversity. I'm a social scientist by trade. Have a PhD in political science. So I bring a totally different perspective to the game. However, speaking about diversity, I do bring a lot to the table in terms of looking at different aspects of how do you bring in different groups of people into the pipeline. So even though I'm not an engineer by trade, but I'm able to marry a lot of research into diversity and human potential and systematic barriers to diversity. And bringing it to the table, it's actually helped a lot in my area of work. Drake State is a historically Black community college. We were founded in 1961 by a land grant from Alabama A&M University. We are a technical school tucked in a couple miles down the street from downtown Huntsville. And some of the people from Huntsville still don't know that we exist. But we actually produce first-class technicians that work in the area. And actually, we did have an intern welder that went to Ohio State. He interned for Marshall, and Marshall loved him so much that they sent him to Ohio State because Ohio State does have the only program in the nation, a baccalaureate program in welding. So there are connections. We are, even though we're on HBCC, we serve the entire community of North Alabama, Madison County. About 64% of our population are Black and African Americans. The rest of them are representative of the community. Average age of our students is 28. So we, again, represent diversity in not only ethnic background, racial background, but also in age background. We are the primary stage for people mid-careers that want to reskill, upskill, find job quickly, people that are focused on careers, people that know what they want to do. If you had spent years in academia, I taught at a research institution for about 16 years. At my alma mater, University of New Mexico, we had almost 20% of our undergraduate population being undecided. Okay, they were in debt for 4 to 6 years of undergraduate school, not knowing what they want to do. Not our students. Our students know what they want to do. Less than 1% of our students are undeclared majors. Everybody else want to be in, they want to be out, they want to get certifications, they want to get their degrees, and most of them get snatched by y'all, by the industry representatives before they graduate. Certainly the welders are, yes. And what I do want y'all to know about Drake State is that even though we are not a research institution, we are a technical school. We prepare people that have the foundational knowledge and the people that know how to work with their hands, the people that work with engineers and help them solve the engineering programs. So what we do is we are reinventing the place for technical 2-year schools in the research pipeline. We have several very successful grants and cooperative agreements with NASA. What we bring to the table is technical expertise, state-of-the-art laboratories where we work with researchers on prototyping, testing, doing all kinds of activities where we excel. So even though we're not a research school, we not only prep people to help you with your research tasks, but we also participate in the research process itself. So this is something that we work on.
So Marina, I know you've got a couple of charts. Do you want to make a couple of quick remarks
Sure.
to those?
Yeah.
All right, just call out next chart when you.
Yeah, the next chart. Actually, yes, I just wanted you to take a look at this chart. So these are not stock pictures. These are our students working on their NASA projects. And like I said, you see our big ABB robotic arm. So we have a research 3D printer of concrete machine that we're about to bring online next month with a public print. So some of you are familiar with the big Gantry system printers. We're working with Icon Technologies, they're working with Marshall on lunar habitat prototypes. Our students are contributing to that project. Very highly motivated student population and instructors.
All right. And just a fun fact for y'all, we actually had teamed with JF Drake on a recent proposal. It was on a CubeSat, and the assembly of the CubeSat was going to take place out at Drake. Unfortunately, it wasn't selected for funding, but we are going to try again. All right. So next up is the professor who is not on the agenda, but he really is here, Dr. Comas Haynes. Comas.
Thank you, Dale. Yes, Comas Haynes. I'm faculty member, actually research faculty member at GeorgiaTech Research Institute, which actually has, as Dale knows, some representation here in Huntsville, although we are primarily located in Atlanta, and we're wholly within Georgia Tech. Especially on a panel like this, it's definitely appropriate for me to just give a bit of a timeline for myself. So I actually went to an HBCU, Florida A&M in Tallahassee, which in a novel way shares its College of Engineering with Florida State, did mechanical engineering and did all my graduate work through the PhD at Georgia Tech. And aside from maybe that being something I would always say as a part of introducing myself, I think it really ties into kind of a tagline that I have. So although my area of research and technical emphasis is regarding energy systems and thermal systems design, what's near and dear as well, even out of experience, is STEM workforce development, especially with regard to diversifying STEM. So with that, we can go to the next slide. A couple slides I'll speak to as far as some interventions that I'm involved with. And these are actually both National Science Foundation projects, and there's some others that I may get a chance to mention. But what I in particular focus on is what I would call advanced STEM diversification. And when I say advanced STEM, that may not be the perfect term for it. What I'm basically relating to is higher levels of education, even within academia, and diversifying those sectors. One of the statements I'll make is that, when you talk about diversifying people, a lot of different ethnicities and different demographics, women and underrepresented minorities can better see themselves in a role if they see someone like them in that role. So what that kind of points to is if you can have a lecture hall like this where you have a person of color or a woman in front of the coursework, it's a natural thing that it would just be all the more an encouragement for students of similar demographics to see themselves in that role. So within that, a couple projects. One is called the Alliances for Graduate Education and the Professoria, AGAP, which is a program at NSF. And in particular, ours is the Engineering Alliance. And what we do is we actually work to enhance the recruitment of and the experience of our postdocs, our engineering postdocs at Georgia Tech. One, just to improve their time there. In engineering, postdocs are not uncommon, but it still doesn't have the head start that, say, the sciences do. It's still kind of a new and even sometimes novel thing for an engineering postdoc to be the case. But while they're there, we want them to have a great experience. And we also want to tool them and equip them to have successful starts in academia. And so you just see a couple of examples there. By the way, it's not just Georgia Tech. Again, it is an alliance. So it's Georgia Tech, Florida A&M, actually my undergrad alma mater, FAMU, Rice in Houston, and University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. And just a couple of example successes for us. You see there where Dr. Mario Bencomo was at Rice as a postdoc. He's now at Fresno State as a faculty member. Dr. Hisham Ali was a postdoc at Georgia Tech in aerospace engineering. Definitely have to emphasize that at this symposium. And he's now a professor in aerospace engineering at UC Boulder. And so we're actually seeing some of the fruit of our efforts to, again, strengthen their time as postdocs and hopefully strengthen them into nice trajectories in academia. One other slide I'll speak to on the next slide is another NSF project, and it's called MPACS. Everybody loves acronyms, but and you see it spelled out there. But in particular, what I would just tell you in a nutshell, what this is about is that we're actually taking probably primarily baby boomers, those who are kind of a maritime faculty, those who are in roles where they've retired, but they still want to give back to engineering academia. And we're leveraging that for them to be mentors translating into counselors, coaches, definitely advocates for underrepresented minority, junior and maybe junior faculty, some associate faculty. So they're basically coming on board as people who've been there, done that in this experience called an academic faculty member experience in engineering, and they're pouring that back into the next wave. So you see a couple of graphics there that speak to that. And just maybe as a final point, what we try to do is we try to match not just even disciplinary emphasis, but subdisciplinary emphasis. So not just an aerospace, emeritus faculty member with an emeritus aerospace faculty member, full-time faculty member that's a person of color and/or a woman, but somebody who's in hypersonics in aerospace with somebody who's interested in hypersonics, because we know that's where the real touch point is. So we've had a lot of good success with that. We're finding, obviously, that kind of counseling and connection and overall support is great for the younger faculty. And it also gives the emeriti faculty a great outlet to continue to pour back into academia, even in this different chapter of their career. So those are two interventions that we're doing. And again, it's great to kind of turn from being a beneficiary to being a benefactor through these kinds of programs. Yes, one interesting fact, I'm gonna make, it's interesting at least, it may be something you don't know, and I think it's in line with the symposium. So a lot of people know Georgia Tech is a big college of engineering, which it is, and it does put out a lot of numbers. What I don't know if people realize is that also Georgia Tech has a lot of prowess with regard to producing a large number of engineers from underrepresented groups, be it women or underrepresented minorities. So it's not just large numbers, but it's large and diverse numbers that Georgia Tech is blessed to be able to achieve.
Thank you, Comas. Let's see, next chart, please. So our next panelist is Dr. Jimmy Hodges, the president of the Calhoun Community College. Jimmy?
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Just a little bit about me. I've spent most all of my life in the North Alabama area. I'm a machinist by trade. I used to work right over here on Sparkman Drive building Tomahawk cruise missiles and space shuttle solid rocket booster parts. And that's back in the 80s and early 90s. I like education. I like teaching people how to work with their hands and to do something that they can be proud of. And I can remember when they would close the shop down and we'd all go watch a launch or I remember if y'all saw the recent Top Gun movie, you know, they talked about launching those Tomahawk cruise missiles, and it still brought tears to my eyes, knowing that I had some little bitty part that I might have built one or two of those. But that's what we do at Calhoun Community College. We're the largest community college in the state. There's 24 of our sister community colleges across the state. We have somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 students. Calhoun is a comprehensive community college. We have, so that means, what does that mean? That means that we have academic transfer, but it also means that we have a whole host of health programs. We have 450 students in our nursing program. We have all kinds of technical skilled trades. We have aerospace welding that we do, where all those folks do in the aerospace welding is weld on exotic materials, aluminum, stainless steels, titaniums, those kind of things. We also have an aerospace technician. What my colleague, Dr. Kingsbury down there said, we create technicians is what we do at a community college. And our technicians learn how to build things. And I would venture to say, I noticed over here a while ago, Blue Origin, SAIC, and Lockheed Martin. What was the other one over there on that side? Boeing. We have co-ops with all of those programs. As a matter of fact, we take great pride in our co-op and our internship programs. We have in our apprenticeships, we have 11 employers. We have 47 apprentices and 9 different occupations. Those are our apprenticeships. But then in our co-ops, we have 95 employer partners, over 300 co-op students. The average pay is $18.42 an hour as of the summer of 22. We have 100% placement rate of those co-op students after they graduate. And most of them average a 3.37 GPA. And we have 51 co-op graduates for this upcoming year. So what do we do at Calhoun? We teach people how to build things, and then we put them to work.
All right. Well, thank you much, Jimmy. And I think you may have a couple of charts.
I
do. You want to say anything to those?
Yes, sir. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on is having earn and learn opportunities. We have in most of our apprenticeship programs, they'll come to school 2 days of work a week and then work 3 days a week. And you'll see right there that we have 100% job placement after graduation if they've been involved in one of those earn and learn programs. Next slide. One thing I wanted to mention is back in 2019, when they celebrated the 50th anniversary of the lunar rover, they came to us and we built a replica of the lunar rover. And here you can see students that have assembled this thing, and it's on display. They got to work with some of the old NASA engineers to help design some of those things. And that was a really prideful time for us. We were really proud of that partnership. Next slide. And then so a couple of other things that I'm really proud of at Calhoun is we award more advanced manufacturing degrees and certificates than any other college in the nation. We also offer quite a number of summer camps to try to encourage individuals who may or may not be interested in a certain field. We have a sweetie camp that we offer each summer that is to young ladies, and it exposes them to some welding, some electrical work, some blueprint reading, and those kinds of things. I've got a little lamp on my desk that they made me last year where it's made out of chain, and they welded the links together and then wired it up with a little light bulb on it, and they got to take each one of them home. And so we're excited about that. It's not on the slide, but last year we also hosted 6 cybersecurity camps, and every day in those cybersecurity camps, we had industry. Some of you may even have been some of our speakers at those camps, and they're a week-long camp on cybersecurity. And one of those camps that we put on for educators, so high school and middle school teachers could come in and update their skill set. Chris Cromley's in the crowd. He would be mad at me if I didn't mention our SET program. We have a systems engineering technologist program, and any of those folks that don't know what that is, if you're interested in systems engineering, see this young man right here. I think that's it. Next slide. Yeah.
Well, all right. And by the way, I've known Chris Crumley a long time and he's never been a young man, but just saying. So yeah, I'm up next, Dale Thomas, like John Horack. I am a UAH.
Hey, I forgot to give my fun fact. I gave you a lot of facts about Calhoun, but my fun fact is I became the president there in June of 2021. And I walked down to our gymnasium and I said, man, this is a fine gymnasium. How's our basketball team? And they said, we hadn't had one in 21 years. And I said, well, that's crazy. Had a nice gym, LED lights, nice floor. So guess what? November the 1st marks our very first basketball game in 21 years. So the community's pretty excited.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Jimmy. All right, so I'm Dale Thomas. As I mentioned, like John Horack, I am a UAH alum twice, and with a degree from North Carolina State mixed in the middle in there, and worked for 32 years for NASA, and then I became a NASA alumni as well, and joined the faculty here at UAH, where I am today. Next chart, please. So when I talk about UAH, what I really want to talk about are, the students and the programs. I mean, most of y'all are here. You can go online and read about the university and the labs and, all the fantastic faculty that, reside here. Fantastic faculty, yeah, okay. But sometimes it's a little harder to find out what the real heartbeat of the university is, which is the students and how engaged they are. And so I just picked up a few snapshots. One of the hats I wear here at UAH is director of the Alabama Space Grant Consortium, which, by the way, is part of the National Space Grant Program that is administered out of Mike Kincaid's Office of STEM Engagement up at headquarters. But these are some of the projects that's helped fund here at UAH, and it funds similar projects at universities and colleges, including some of the junior colleges across the state. But if you look at some of those pictures, you can see in the upper left, that is one of UAH's, and I still want to call it the Great Moon Buggy Race, but it's evolved in name now. Now it's called the Human Powered Rover Challenge, okay? I think I'll still call it the Great Moon Buggy, all right? Then working your way clockwise on the center right or center top up there is the UAH Space Hardware Club. Yes, that is a thing here at UAH. It's a student club, totally organized and run by students with one faculty mentor to guide them. And there you can see them doing a balloon launch out at Jemison High School with their magnet students. And of course, that's a high school here in Huntsville. And then continuing on to the picture in the upper right, you can see Space Hardware Club students. In this case, you can see Mackenzie Perry talking to a group of Discovery Middle School students in Madison while they were taking a tour of UAH, while they were attending a science and engineering fair here at UAH. So a lot of, K through 12 engagement comes from the college students. Okay, if you look at the bottom, on the bottom left, each summer UAH hosts a tech trek camp. It's aimed at, it includes a lot of hands-on science and STEM exercises, but it's really aimed at trying to capture middle school girls, because studies have found that that's when girls start disengaging from STEM careers is in middle school. So that's specifically targeted to that audience to try to keep them in the STEM talent pool just a little longer. And then finally, you can see down on the lower right, that's the UAH team that'll be competing in the 2022-2023 NASA Student Launch Competition. So a lot of teams competing in various NASA competitions that are run through the NASA Office of STEM Engagement at headquarters. So yeah, well, students tend to be very engaged outside the classroom here at UAH. I hope that's one of the things you see. In terms of a fun fact at UAH, I actually talked to some of the students about that. And here's the answer that I got more than any other: Fried Chicken Wednesday. All right. Now, I'll just ask some of the UH students, did I get that right? Yeah. All right. What happens? Fried Chicken Wednesday is a thing here at UAH. And, kudos to the staff. They really do make really good fried chicken. And, the students are there. The faculty will come in, and it's sort of like going to a German pub where you just grab a seat wherever you can, so it ends up being a good mixer. I've not personally been there, but when Dr. Carr was there, but I know from talking to him, he's been to Fried Chicken Wednesday a few times, and it's just a great mixer. And as y'all know, STEM students tend not to be the most outgoing people in the world. So having a little thing to help socialization helps, but you get a good cross mix. You'll have faculty sitting with students from other schools and everything. Now, here's the plug I want to put in on that, is nobody will chase an industry rep or a government person. They don't check IDs at the door. You can come in and go through the food line and pay and eat your fried chicken, and then go find a seat wherever you can and sit down and get to know some of the students. And trust me, they don't bite, or they don't bite very hard. Okay. And likewise for the students, they've learned that the faculty don't bite either. So add, to the mix there, industry and students. So that's the UAH fun fact I'll toss out. Now, let's get to our first round of questions. Let's see. I can just use this. Let's see. Yeah. So in a minute, I'm going to get to a QR code, and this is going to be the way you enter questions today that'll help guide the conversation. I'll be putting up another QR code for those of you who missed this one, okay? But I see a bunch of cameras out, so I'm going to hold on just a minute. Okay. Next chart, please. Like I said, don't worry, it's coming back. So one of the things that I did want to talk about for our opening question here is Vice President Kamala Harris rolled out the STEM education plan recently on a visit to Johnson Space Center for a meeting of the National Space Council meeting. If you have not had a chance to read it, it's a very readable document. I want to say it's on order of, 15 to 20 pages long. So you actually can read it. It's not, the typical dry government fodder that you might expect. It lays out how to cross all the agencies that touch STEM, how to engage and start, sustaining and growing the STEM workforce that our country needs. And of course, NASA's engagement is, and particularly from a space STEM orientation. Next chart, please. And by the way, there's a QR code to download that, or you can just be lazy and just Google White House STEM technology roadmap, something along that line. It'll pull that up. Okay. Now, what happens, if you're ready, this will take you to a site where you can enter questions. You can see questions that have already been entered. You can enter your own, or you can vote up, some of the questions that are already on there. And that's going to be how we moderate this discussion. This is the, potluck aspect that I was talking about earlier. Okay. But now, while we're getting, some of the questions entered, I did want to start with a question for the panel, which is talking about that White House plan on STEM technology. What's one thing that you think they got right? What really speaks to you or resonates in the plan? And then what do you think the biggest challenge to actually implementing some of this is going to be to realize that progress? So, John, would you care to get the discussion started?
So, yeah, I might quote my friend and colleague from Huntsville, Rosa Allen, who's a longtime NASA person here, and she says, the more important than the plan is the planning. And so I think it's important that we have a plan, and I'm less worried about what's in it, because I think generally a STEM plan is going to come out with positive things. We can all argue about what we think should be emphasized. And so A, I'm really glad we have one. B, I'm glad it has come out at the very highest levels of the executive branch of government, because it highlights a challenge that we need to work on in the United States to maintain our global competitiveness and our way of life. But what I'm worried about is that maybe we think because we have a plan, then it'll take care of itself, or that it's somebody else's job. And it can lead us to think that, well, yes, STEM is something that you work in, but I don't, or that you work in it, I don't. And actually, I really believe it's imperative for every single belly button in this room to figure out, how do we work this challenge, and what are you doing personally? What am I doing personally? What is as an individual, what am I doing personally? I was mindful of Homer Hickam, who's lived in Huntsville and of course wrote the famous book Rocket Boys and had the movie made. Homer Hickam didn't get into STEM because of a national policy. He got into STEM because Wernher von Braun wrote him a letter or responded to his letter. And so if von Braun himself thought it was important enough to engage one-on-one in a retail conversation with a young person to encourage them to overcome their background, chase their dream, as my little Neil Armstrong doll says, take a small step, take your first step, no matter how big or small. No policy is going to help us fix that unless we ourselves as individuals take ownership in trying to make that happen.
Yeah. Very good, John. Yeah, plans don't make progress. People do. Good point. Anyone else care to chime in on this? Marina, please.
So as a representative of a two-year college, I was really pleased to see the appendix to the plan, because we, as a two-year community colleges, we sort of tend to be the poster children to the STEM pipeline. Right. And a lot of the times, qualifications for better jobs or careers really start with a requirement for a 4-year degree. Internships, such as NASA internships, require somebody to be enrolled in a 4-year program. FBI internships, a lot of programs that are out there are not for our students, okay? And so I was really encouraged to see this problem at least recognized with jobs that require either high school and a certification or an associate degree be on the same spectrum as other engineering degrees, because that is important. Just because, and that's what we tell our students, that's what we see. That's what we see from people that work here in Huntsville in aerospace industry. People start as technicians and they move on to being doctors, right? Just because you get a 2-year degree doesn't mean that that's your stopping point. But we don't want to be closing the doors to people that start their careers on the manufacturing floor, or the people that decided that that's their route. And that is actually what bridges us to diversity, because if you look at different segments of population, for instance, our Hispanic students don't want to take out loans to go to school. They want to go to school and work, and certification in the 2-year degree, that's the way to go, because culturally that's where they are, right? And so recognizing that engineering pipeline starts with a certification and a 2-year degree credentials, and they're important, that was really encouraging to me. A discouraging fact for me kind of echoes what John said. It identifies lots of problems. Actually, the social scientists, I was really pleased to see lots of footnotes with references to a lot of good studies, but the document really falls short for actually any actionable items that can be taken. I understand why, but still, it does fall really short on anything that actionable that can be taken and boiled down. So it's up to all of us to figure out what from this document we can adopt as a company, as an organization, as a mentor, as an educator, because, even if your company does not do something, you as a successful professional can do something about it. And so in that sense, that is a good document and does provide some direction.
Yeah. So Marina, just following up on that, I know when I read the plan, the thing that struck me most was indeed the appendix, that list all the various occupations, and so many occupations in STEM that don't require college degrees. And I remember, Von Braun himself would go out of his way to acknowledge the contributions of the technicians, the janitors, the barbers, that there's a whole lot more than a team of engineers and scientists required to pull off a space mission. And very often when we're planning, we just fail to recognize that. So it's a good point.
And I know I've been talking a lot, but I just wanted to add this one more point. When we wrote our first application to NASA funding, we actually approached our engineering team mentors from NASA Marshall, and I said, well, what did you learn from the experience of working on this 3D printing gantry machine? And they said, if nothing else, what we've learned, and that was one of their lessons learned, was involve technicians at every stage of planning, design, have them sit on the meetings, because that reduces your time to, design to delivery, improves your design, reduces the error, improves the accuracy. And to me, that was really telling, because that was exactly what we were trying to show, is that, technicians are not, they're not the afterthought. They bring lots of value, real value. They improve your bottom line.
Well, only if we actually want to build something.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Jimmy?
Yes, I would just like to mention that, it's always good to see some documentations that are focusing on STEM.
Mm-hmm.
The world that we live in now is much different than when I was a young man. My dad had me out working on the lawnmower and working on different things. That doesn't happen too much anymore. So I'm encouraged by those camps that I mentioned earlier to expose young people to STEM fields. And so the execution of that plan is going to be where the challenges lie. They always say the devil's in the details. Mm-hmm. And so actually doing something, and that's why I get excited about those summer camps. I have a 12-year-old granddaughter. Her name's Carly Jane, and she's in the 7th grade, and she is taking a career exploration class right now. And she came in the other day. She had been to our 3D printing lab at Calhoun, and she was so excited. Papa, guess what? I'm going to get to print something on the 3D printer tomorrow. So those are good things. And I think the execution and the exposure to young people for STEM fields is one of the most important things that we can do.
So, Jimmy, you've got her hooked. Don't let her wiggle off in middle school. Okay?
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Very good.
That's
Would
actually,
you like to add anything?
Yes, that's actually a good segue as far as when you were just ending on saying don't let her fade from that, right? And I think one of the leading thing I think that I liked was, and it's not necessarily brand new, but you saw multiple sectors of they're being charged, as far as not just encouraging them, exciting them, prepare them, and then when you prepare them, hire them, just having multiple sectors. And I think Aerospace 2030 is going to come up at some point. And I would think that has some influence, nudge, what have you, from the hire them standpoint of things, right? So seeing the multiple sectors of, the transition from a young one to a professional, that was good to see. At the same, and then in the other part of it, it's not trivial, ownership and accountability, right? How do you fairly make sure that it's not just a good charge put out there, but the right level of ownership, the right level of accountability, rightly distributed, especially because it is multi-agency. So how has that worked out? So those are my primary observations.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're actually going to start tying into some of the questions that have been entered and voted up. And so the first one I'll just ask, and so this will be a toss-up. I'll just see who leans forward first. And I'm going to broaden the question a little bit from how it's entered, but the way the question entered is, what emerging trends are you seeing in engineering education? And so what I'd like to do is broaden that to the biggie engineering to include technicians and so forth. So would anybody like to jump on that one?
Could you repeat it one time?
What are some of the emerging trends that you're seeing in engineering and technician education?
Well, I'll just say about our technicians is that they are in such demand that we need more students because we have more jobs available, and they're higher paying jobs than what it might have been a few years ago. They can start out oftentimes at, you heard a while ago, on just the average co-op, it was 18, but you can just start off on some of these aerospace technician jobs easily at $20 an hour or more at a technician level. So that's not something that I see emerging, except that the need for them is emerging. So it's great that we need more students, and people need to know what that actually does.
So speaking of that demand, are you seeing it, stay, continue, accelerate? Do you think it's starting to top out? What are you seeing on that?
No, sir. It's a steady increase.
Okay.
Steady increase.
So,
and of course, we're living in the fastest growing area of the country. And yeah, it's a steady increase.
Okay. Anyone else care to pile on?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think I'm seeing, and again, my baseline isn't as long as some, is that students seem to be more interested in figuring out what industry they want to be in or what community they want to be in, and less about whether they want to be a chemical engineer, materials engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer. They gravitate towards an industry, and in our case, space. And if, they might bump around a little bit and change their major once or twice, hopefully not 3 times, but still find a way to latch into the industry that they want to be a part of. And I hope that when we encounter that in the context of, let's say, education, people who are in the education environment, that we don't discourage, well, you're not chemical engineer, is just not really for you. So we need to find a way to keep the fire alive, because people come because they want to be a part of space, or they come because they want to be a part of healthcare. They come because they want to be a part of Pickett. And so even though they might not find, and you said, most people are undecided, right? Yeah, absolutely. That's okay. That's actually really good. You don't have to decide your major. Pick a community, an environment, an industry you want to be in. You want to be in the space industry? Great. We'll help you guide to find which degree you want, because the degree is less important than finding the industry you want to be in. Because as you said, we need everything to execute a space mission, whether it's accounting or contracting or welding or astrophysics. You got to have it all. So I see them picking an industry.
Yeah, and with that kind of purpose mindset, I think one of the things I'm seeing is not that this wasn't the case beforehand, but to me, it seems like what I'm going to call engineering for good theme. I think I see that more and more now. I don't know how old engineering without borders is, but my point is, whereas when I first heard about it, maybe 30 years ago, give or take, it seemed like it was this niche, kind of nice, beneficial thing to do. I'll leave it at that. But it didn't seem like it was a mainstream. Now that is the mainstream of things. The students really want to know that what they do, again, purpose driven, is going to make an impact, and a good impact at that. So I think that's one shift or growth that has been very noticeable to me.
Okay. Do you want to add anything, Marina?
Yes, and yes to everything that was just discussed. What we do see more and more, and we do have a NASA Mura project sponsored, and so we bring over 100 students on campus and let them see different engineering programs that we have. So we had a diverse panel of engineers talk to them, and what they emphasized is engineers these days need project management skills. And so there's lots of this management and engineering sort of marriage that is being emphasized. And I think in some ways it's helping the students, because we a lot of the times deal with the students who just don't see themselves in engineering. They think that engineering is something that's not for them. And so if nothing else, that helps bring the students in some way, and really show that, you may start in engineering, but then you end up doing more of a, a cross between different disciplines. That also sort of reduces that entry barrier, just, the sense of belonging that the students can sort of create, figure out, and that helps a lot. And also just the simplification of access to knowledge right now with the prevalence of IT technology. It's a lot easier for the students to figure out, well, what is it? You know, even if I don't know what it is, I can Google it, right? And so that helps a lot. Demystifying the whole engineering field helps a lot. So I think that's also helping, and it's changing the field a little bit. It's making it less elitist, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll basically pile on, you know, yes to everything so far. And one of the trends that I'm seeing is, and I think that the whole COVID pandemic didn't lead to it, I think it highlighted it, is the whole work from anywhere philosophy. When I first hired on to NASA, you know, I sat in a office and there were 5 other engineers, you know, all at desk around the walls in the office. And, you know, that was just the way we were organized back in the day to facilitate the communication, you know, that had to happen. And, you know, now then, look, people are working from home. I talked with a former student who is now, you know, a leader at NASA Marshall, who's living in San Diego. All right. The ability to work in virtual teams, you know, is going to have a huge impact, and that is going to manifest itself. You know, what it all means, I wish I knew, and I wish I knew where it was going, but that is going to change engineering practice as we know it. And when I say engineering, I mean that with a big E. Okay. All right, so another question. This is one that was voted to the top, but I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit also. So the question is written, what has a bigger impact on young people, meeting an astronaut or someone near their own age building impressive rockets? So I'm going to broaden that question just a little bit and say, what do y'all think motivates people, motivates students of different backgrounds and so forth? You know, one of the big themes of the plan was about bringing in, you know, everybody to the table. Not, I often think about when, you know, when I was a little boy watching the NASA moonshots, if I'd have been looking at mission control and it had been full of, you know, women of color rather than white men, would I have aspired to be a NASA engineer? I don't know. I hope I would, but I don't know. But so with that in mind, what do you think motivates students to get into STEM, to continue in STEM? Okay. Thoughts from anyone? Who'd like to go first? Oh, I don't see anybody leaning forward on this one. Comas, you leaned. I saw it. Go ahead.
I was actually, so when you said that, I was actually thinking how, when I was boy, I wanted to do satellites. I wanted to do satellite engineering. Okay. And it kind of, you know, over time, at some point, it kind of became more so about energy. But I think the point I would raise is when you asked that question, actually, I didn't, not just because there's not that many that are going to make it to the astronaut stage. It really wasn't being an astronaut. It was actually about the tinkering and the technology of getting it up there. Right. That was the highlight. So definitely meeting the person who's building, to that question, meeting the person that's building the impressive rockets would be more impressive to me. And I think what that speaks to as well is, even as I think Marina brought up too, about just about dependencies, just seeing the different sectors of where you can go, and not just thinking it's about, yes, we all know that's a glamorous, position to be in, to be an astronaut for good reason. But there are a lot of immensely more supportive roles, critical roles to that happening. So again, being able to meet the people who are building the technology that you see, you know, the glamorous position flying in or what have you, I think that's more impressive.
Okay. Anyone want to pile on?
I would want to pile on that before John. And this was something highlighted. We do a teacher training every year, and so we had she was a female person of color, and then she was saying something about that. I'm sure a lot of girls still continue to experience, which is, you know, this subconscious gender segregation, right? Girls are good and such, right? And then girls are not good in engineering or in math. And despite what we all like to hope that it doesn't happen anymore, it continues to be prevalent in a lot of places. And so what it boils down to me, what I see a lot is cultivating a sense of belonging. It's within my reach. If I want to, I can do it, right? So, I mean, it's not like, you know, it's just going to happen for you, but at least that there's not going to be barriers for me, right? You know, if I want to, I can pursue it. And this fundamental idea is what's preventing a lot of girls, people of color, people with disabilities from pursuing, because they firmly believe that it's just out of their reach, right? You know, there's not even point of pursuing. And this is what's really demotivating a lot of people from even trying. So if we address that in one way or the other, I think that would really help.
So that sort of cuts to the heart of the matter. Do you have any thoughts on what we could do to reverse that demotivation, if you will, to help people see that, you know, I could do that?
I mean, look, you know, I probably win the Nobel Prize if I give you, you know, a can solution right there. There's so many things.
And
right?
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
If you'll solve the problem, I'll write your nomination. Okay.
There is so many things, right? You know, you can identify an area and pursue that as a company, as an educator, as a mentor, right? So we've identified several key areas, right? And one is working with the STEM teachers, the area STEM teachers. And so they found it liberating just discussing this whole idea and sharing the experiences, because if you find out all of a sudden that you are not alone, all of a sudden it normalizes it, right? And it normalizes having a discussion about it, and therefore normalizes you to speak up against it next time you see it, right? Normalizes you more forcefully doing something to make sure that it doesn't happen again, right? You know, mentor, you know, younger teachers that come, you know, talk to your principals. It replicates, but it also, you know, it requires time. We also bring our teachers to NASA Marshall with our partners, because we want them to see what engineering is in a variety of different engineering topics, because then they can go back and talk to their students, because not everybody's the same and not everybody's interests are the same, right? And so, because a lot of the people think that engineering is, you know, building something, right? But it's so much more than that. And so if they have a better idea of what careers are out there, they can inspire their students out there, right? So that right there is, you know, is one thing. And as a gender scholar, you know, for me, you know, closing the gender divide is really important. So I usually pile up on that. You know, working with the students, what we also do is helping the students figure out, you know, you can come and try it. And if you don't like it, it's okay. There's something else for you. You know, the engineering is so diverse that if you didn't like this one area, you can go try something else. Or what NASA is doing right now here at Marshall, where they're marrying psychology with engineering, right? You know, they're working on, you know, marrying two different fields that were not usually thought about being together. They're doing that. So if we can expand the horizon of where I can fit in, I think that would really help inspire more people to aspire, because, you know, in the end, it's still up to each individual to pursue. But if they're absolutely discouraged from it, then it kind of falls flat.
Okay. John, you were giving me one. Go ahead.
Yeah, the question is, what has more meaning, meeting an astronaut or meeting someone your age building a rocket? So, you know, I tend not to be a monopolar thinker. I actually think there's at least two dimensions to maintaining that motivation, and one is the dimension of, can it be done? Like, oh my gosh, we can go to the moon. And then the other dimension is, can it be done by me, right? So, you know, it's great to meet Ozzie Smith, right? He's Cardinal shortstop, Hall of Famer. I mean, my gosh, it can be done. Look at the way that guy plays baseball. Can it be done by me? I don't think so, right? So while that first impression of meeting Neil Armstrong or, you know, meeting Mae Jemison, it can really give you sort of a peak flux of inspiration. It has to be combined with a fluence of inspiration that says, and it can be done by me. So, and I think Dr. Haynes said, you know, seeing someone like you who can do both the amazing thing and convince you that it can be done by someone like you, that sort of cuts the Gordian knot, right? But back to my comment about each one of us has the power within us to self-identify with another person who is coming along behind us and say, they may look at you and say, oh my gosh, you built a spacecraft that flew in space. Like, yeah, okay. But you can do that too. And you may not be my gender, my background. You may not be from St. Louis like me or whatever. You might be a Cubs fan. I'm okay with that. Mostly.
Bless their hearts.
Bless your heart. Right. They can say that here. So you have to have both. And I think that each of us, none of us perhaps in the room are the Neil Armstrongs of the world or the Jack Schmidts of the world or Chuck Yeager or, anybody like that might give the like, whoa, Serena Williams, I think is in town tonight, right? I think she is.
Really?
Yeah. That Girls Inc. Right. Thank you, Mike. So like, wow.
So is she coming to the student poster competition?
I don't know if she is or not, but if she did, we'd have more people there. Right. And so I can never play tennis like Serena Williams, but I can really be inspired by her. Now it takes somebody else to help me with my game and convince me that I can continue to do this and that the hard work that I must put in to get better will be worth it. Otherwise, the inspirational peak of having met Serena Williams and knowing how amazing she is as an athlete and her accomplishments, eventually that just will tail off because I don't see and I can't internalize that. So I actually think you need both. You need to meet astronauts and you need to meet people your age doing what it is that you want to do.
Okay.
And I think that it's very important just to have experiences. I have a thing that I say quite often is you got to see it before you can be it. And I think it's important for us as individuals, even as adults, but more especially for our young people, for them to have experiences. And that's why it's important for us to offer summer camps. It's important for us to offer to go and speak at a high school or a middle school or somewhere. I think it's just really important to do that.
Okay, Comas?
Yeah, I was to continue for a minute with the sports metaphor, but sports connection, but beyond that, something I was just reminded about too. We also have to give people room to be imperfect, right? So especially,
Lord knows I've chewed up enough of that room in my day.
well, we all do, but it's not what we bring up when we get announced, when we get presented, right? He's this, he's that, he's that. So sports connection, Michael Jordan has done, I don't know how many commercials, and I don't not like I know them all.
I know the one you're going to pick.
So my favorite one is where he's walking into the stadium and they're, oh, Michael Jordan, you're showing that. And he's saying this is what they see, and then he goes through all of his failures. How many games how many shots he missed at the end of the game. Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot too. Mm-hmm. It's really a lot. And then I think the tagline at the end is, I failed. That's why I win. Mm-hmm. And his point was, you just keep trying. And I think that's what's so key is that, especially if you're from an underrepresented group, you already very easily can be suffering from imposter syndrome, be it externally imposed or internal, because you don't see that many of you in the first place. So now, how many errors did Ozzie Smith have? You know what I mean? It's not a lot. He was a great player. I like him too.
He made a few though.
He made a few. Everybody does. And I think that you got to give people room to fail. How many times did that person who made the impressive rocket mess up? And let them be comfortable with conveying that. I guarantee you, it's not that people necessarily don't want to do something. It's that they're not excellent at it the first go around, and now all kind of doubts and things kind of factor in on you, and you kind of shun yourself away from it. So I think it's so important that we be more transparent. Really, we don't have to make anything up. We just have to be more candid about our failures that lead to the successes, because we don't just stop there. I think that's one very huge thing.
Yeah, I let my students know that at Northwestern, my freshman year, freshman physics, I got a 19 on my physics exam. A 19 out of 100. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run away, hide, until my buddy comes running up behind me. I won't tell who it is because his wife works at NASA Langley on the hypersonic or the supersonic aircraft. So now you can go figure out who it might be. And he runs up to me. He's like, "What'd you get? What'd you get?" I got like a 17. And I'm like, "Oh, we're all struggling, aren't we?" And the answer is yes, we are. And you just got to pick yourself up and turn what might be a fall into a slip and just keep going.
All right, so I'm getting the hook over here. So we still have a lot of questions on the list, but I guess I'm going to stop now. Okay, but I can do one more question. Okay. So somebody brought it up, Comas, I think it was you. Industry's been talking about increasing the diversity of our community, and they refer to the Aerospace 2030 pledge. What impact do you see from that pledge on your campus, and what are your thoughts? Repeat that, please. So the initial part of the question talks about increasing diversity, of the STEM community, and they refer to the Aerospace 2030 pledge in the question. And the question is, what impact from that pledge do you see on your campus? So we can close with that. So
I'll jump in very quickly. It's not that I just give right a chance. I can't say I explicitly see it, but as I understand, every industry, there is mutual good peer pressure with metrics associated. So they've got to be more aggressive with the attempts at trying to recruit from our campuses. So I can't say that I've explicitly seen that, but it's great to see that mutual good peer pressure they're all putting on each other to do better in that regard.
Okay.
And I would say that we consciously work to improve our diversity numbers. And we do that by working with Boys and Girls Clubs and different organizations in our different cities. Again, to highlight some of our diverse success stories, we'll have them recorded so that we don't have to have that person appear everywhere, but we'll take those and share those with smaller groups of young people.
Okay.
Yeah, quickly. In who we hire and how we hire and the practices we use to get pools of candidates that we want to be choosing from on that end. And then I think it's forced us to really look at the business model of higher ed, which in many ways I feel is deeply broken because it's unaffordable for many people. It's inaccessible for many people. And so at Ohio State, we see a lot of attention to working very hard to make sure students can graduate. For example, debt-free. President Johnson has a program on that. So who we hire, how we hire, and what our business model is so that more people can avail themselves of what we have to offer.
Yeah. Marina?
So what we see is that there is finally a more meaningful conversation where companies are really deeply thinking about what diversity means for them and how they conceptualize it. And what we see in some of the more successful models where they take it, they let the employee groups that represent different diverse groups to drive some of the initiatives, because and that proves to be successful because then it makes a conversation more meaningful for us when we come and we ask for collaboration, or we find areas where we can jointly work on a project that would improve their bottom line, but also help our students, go up the pipeline. So in that sense, yes.
Yeah. And so from a personal observation, I would basically echo what Comas says, which is the fact that there is attention on it now and measures is truly of value. I can't speak to the exact impacts on UAH. I could probably take an action item and go dig that up. But I will say from a strategic standpoint, once you start paying attention to something, it's automatically going to get better. I can reference the famous Hawthorne experiment if you're familiar with that. And the fact that you now have industry and universities actually paying conscious attention to the problem, it is going to get better. Will it be solved? Probably not, but it's going to improve. My 2 cents on that. All right. And so with that, Alan, I guess I will yield the floor back, although I wouldn't mind keeping going a while. This has been good.
There's lots of questions. Well, thank you for the panel.